Welcome back to our channel, your ultimate destination for the deepest dives into the thrilling world of the young and the restless. Today is a spectacular day to unravel the tangled webs of Genoa City. Grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let us embark on a dramatic journey through the latest shocking twists that are leaving fans utterly breathless. The atmosphere in Genoa City has always been thick with unspoken secrets and lingering resentments. But the current storm brewing over the lives of Danny Dupree, Andre Richardson, and Heather Armstrong is poised to shatter the very foundations of trust. For weeks, the intricate dance of love and deception has been playing out in the shadows, with Danny finding herself increasingly suffocated by a creeping, relentless paranoia. Her romance with Andre, once a beacon of positive joy and stability that even earned the rare, fiercely guarded approval of her father, Vernon Dupree, has slowly mutated into a terrifying labyrinth of doubt. The deceptive calm before this emotional hurricane has only served to amplify the devastating impact of the revelations that have just exploded into the open, forever altering the trajectories of everyone involved in this toxic, highly volatile triangle. The psychological weight of buried history has been gnawing at Danny's soul, driving her to the absolute brink of desperation. Every single time the name Heather Armstrong was whispered in their proximity, Danny observed the subtle, involuntary micro-expressions that betrayed a haunting, agonizing secret lurking behind Andre's carefully constructed facade. His defensive postures, his sudden evasiveness, and the inexplicable synchronized behaviors between him and Heather painted a terrifying picture that Danny could no longer ignore. Driven by an insatiable, desperate need for the absolute truth, Danny found herself crossing boundaries she never imagined she would breach, plunging headfirst into an investigation of the man she loved with her entire being. The agonizing uncertainty transformed her into a relentless seeker of facts, pushing her to uncover the dark, hidden corners of Andre's deeply haunted past. The visceral experience of her devastating discovery is a moment that will forever be etched into the tragic history of Genoa City. Alone in the quiet, dim solitude of Andre's private space, Danny's trembling fingers meticulously searched through his most guarded belongings. The air in the room felt heavy, thick with the scent of old leather and impending doom, as the dust danced in the narrow shafts of sunlight piercing through the drawn curtains. Her desperate search finally led her to a hidden compartment, a secret sanctuary where Andre had buried the physical manifestations of his darkest sins. There, she uncovered an archaic, weathered audio recorder and a dusty, leather-bound diary artifacts of a past he had desperately tried to obliterate from existence. The sheer physical weight of these items in her hands was nothing compared to the catastrophic emotional weight they were about to unleash upon her unsuspecting heart. With her breath caught in her throat and her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs, Danny pressed the play button on the archaic device. The initial hiss of static filled the silent, suffocating room, serving as a chilling prelude to the unmistakable, emotionally raw voice of Andre Richardson. The confession that poured forth from the speaker was an agonizing, soul-crushing admission of a deeply haunted past. Speaking to an unnamed, trusted confidant from years gone by, Andre's voice cracked with the immense, suffocating guilt of his historical connection to Heather. He spoke of his desperate, frantic need to bury his sins, to outrun the ghosts that relentlessly pursued him in the dark. And then, the earth-shattering revelation echoed through the room. Heather Armstrong had once been pregnant with his child. The magnitude of this buried secret hit Danny with the force of a runaway freight train, completely paralyzing her with shock and disbelief. The immediate psychological collapse of Danny Dupree was a masterclass in profound, unadulterated heartbreak. The sheer weight of the recorded confession crushed her spirit, shattering the idyllic, fairy tale romance she believed she had built with Andre. The realization that her entire life, her sense of security, and her vision of the future had been constructed on a fragile, rotting foundation of lies brought her to her knees. The tears of absolute betrayal streamed down her face, staining the aged pages of the diary as she read the corroborating ink that documented Andre's desperate attempts to cover up his obsessive, haunted past. The man who had brought such vibrant light into her world, the man who had stood as a protective shield against the manipulative psychological games of her ex-father-in-law, Bill Hamilton, was now the very architect of her ultimate destruction. The agonizing pain of this betrayal was a physical ache, a gaping wound in her chest that threatened to consume her entirely. Yet, from the ashes of her profound sorrow, a righteous, burning fury began to ignite within Danny's soul. Refusing to be relegated to the role of a passive, weeping victim in her own tragic life story, she wiped the tears from her cheeks and allowed a cold, impenetrable armor to harden around her shattered heart. Danny meticulously orchestrated the ultimate, explosive confrontation, setting the stage for a reckoning that would leave no stone unturned and no lie unchallenged. She chose a neutral, yet highly emotionally charged environment for this meeting, a space where neither Andre nor Heather could escape the blinding, unforgiving light of the truth. With calculated precision, she issued the invitations, summoning the two architects of her misery to a confrontation that would irrevocably alter the landscape of their intertwined lives. The trap was set, and the players were about to walk blindly into an emotional slaughterhouse. The arrival of the antagonists was a study in contrasting deceptions. Andre walked into the room with a practiced mask of concerned innocence, his demeanor reflecting a man completely unaware of the impending apocalyptic reckoning that awaited him. He approached Danny with the gentle, reassuring gestures of a loving partner, utterly oblivious to the fact that she now held the keys to his destruction. Moments later, Heather Armstrong arrived, radiating her signature enigmatic, calculating aura. Her presence was a suffocating force, her eyes darting around the room as she assessed the shifting power dynamics with the cold precision of a seasoned predator. The palpable, suffocating tension in the room was electric, the air crackling with the unspoken hostilities as the three vertices of this deeply toxic, historically burdened triangle finally converged in a single, explosive space. Without a moment of hesitation, the confrontation ignited into a blazing inferno of accusations and denials. Danny unleashed her pent-up fury, her voice trembling with a potent, terrifying mixture of profound heartbreak and unyielding, undeniable strength. She confronted them directly with their highly suspicious, synchronized behaviors, mercilessly peeling back the intricate layers of their carefully constructed lies. She demanded answers for the lingering glances, the hushed conversations, and the suffocating presence of Heather that had cast a long, dark shadow over her relationship. Andre's reaction was one of desperate, frantic panic. He immediately launched into a frantic campaign of gaslighting, desperately attempting to minimize his historical connection to Heather and pleading for Danny to trust the love they shared. His words, however, rang hollow and desperate against the insurmountable weight of the truth Danny now possessed. Heather, never one to retreat from a psychological battle, launched her own subtle, venomous counterattack. She engaged in a masterful display of manipulation, attempting to twist the narrative to her advantage, perhaps feigning a twisted form of victimhood or projecting a smug, infuriating superiority over the younger, devastated woman. The fiery, venomous exchange of words between Danny and Heather was a spectacular clash of wills, a vicious fight not just over the affections of a man, but over the absolute, unvarnished truth of a buried history that refused to stay dead and buried. Heather's calculating demeanor clashed violently with Danny's raw, unfiltered emotional agony, creating a spectacular, horrifying symphony of betrayal and righteous anger that echoed off the walls of the room. The climax of this agonizing confrontation reached a fever pitch, pushing all three individuals to the absolute limits of their emotional endurance. Just as Andre found himself completely cornered, desperately trying to spin a convoluted web of plausible deniability to save his crumbling relationship, the suffocating atmosphere of the room was violently, unexpectedly shattered. The heavy wooden doors burst open with a resounding crash, bringing the chaotic screaming match to a dead, horrifying halt. The sudden, dramatic intrusion of a mysterious third party froze the room in a state of absolute, paralyzing shock. Danny, Andre, and Heather turned in unison, their faces reflecting a myriad of terrifying emotions as they realized that the boundaries of their private war had just been breached by an external, highly volatile force. The identity of this third character, whether it be an old, disgruntled associate from Andre's murky past, a relentless private investigator like Joey or Randy, who had been meticulously tracking Heather's stalking activities, or a completely unforeseen ghost returning for vengeance, matters less than the apocalyptic bombshell they were about to drop. Stepping forward into the fray with unyielding confidence, this intruder did not merely bring empty accusations, they brought irrefutable, concrete, devastating evidence. With a dramatic, theatrical flourish, a manila folder was thrown onto the table, spilling its contents for all to see. There, in stark, undeniable black and white, lay the medical records, the faded ultrasound images, and the legally binding documents that unequivocally, indisputably proved that Heather Armstrong had indeed been pregnant with Andre Richardson's child. The sheer, undeniable truth of the revelation hung in the air like a guillotine, ready to sever the final threads of Andre's deceptive life. The devastating aftermath of this catastrophic revelation was a scene of absolute, unmitigated ruin. The irrefutable evidence completely annihilated Andre's remaining psychological defenses. His carefully maintained mask of innocence and control disintegrated into dust, leaving behind a broken, profoundly guilty man whose darkest, most unforgivable sins were now laid bare under the harsh, unforgiving fluorescent lights. He collapsed into himself, unable to meet the agonizing, betrayed gaze of the woman he claimed to love. Heather's calculated, icy composure finally cracked under the immense, crushing weight of the undeniable proof, her enigmatic facade crumbling as the reality of her exposed past washed over her. And Danny, the tragic epicenter of this horrific deception, stood amidst the smoking ruins of her relationship, experiencing a profound, soul-crushing despair that transcended mere heartbreak. The final, rusted nail had been brutally driven into the coffin of her trust, leaving her adrift in an ocean of agonizing betrayal. The ripple effects of this catastrophic revelation are destined to send massive, destructive shockwaves across the entire canvas of Genoa City. The implications extend far beyond the shattered hearts in that room. Consider the impending, terrifying reaction of Vernon Dupree. Vernon has been fiercely, uncompromisingly guarding his daughter against the psychological warfare and manipulative games of her ex-father-in-law, Bill Hamilton. He championed Andre, believing him to be the safe, positive harbor that Danny so desperately needed. When Vernon inevitably learns that the man he trusted has inflicted a level of trauma and deception far worse than anything Bill Hamilton could have ever orchestrated, his wrath will be biblical. The protective father will undoubtedly transform into a relentless force of vengeance, seeking to destroy the man who shattered his daughter's spirit. The impending clash between Vernon and Andre promises to be a spectacle of epic, destructive proportions. Furthermore, this explosive revelation raises a multitude of intriguing, deeply unsettling questions that will undoubtedly drive the narrative of the upcoming episodes into uncharted, thrilling territories. What exactly happened to the child that Heather carried? Was the pregnancy tragically terminated? Was the child lost to the unforgiving hands of fate? Or is there a secret, hidden heir lurking in the shadowy corners of Andre and Heather's haunted past, waiting to emerge and claim their legacy? What is Heather's ultimate sinister endgame in returning to Genoa City at this precise moment? And how does her history of stalking tie into this grand, manipulative design? Can Andre Richardson ever hope to earn a shred of redemption, or is he permanently condemned to the prison of his own deceit? And perhaps most importantly, will Danny Dupree survive this emotional apocalypse, or will this profound betrayal extinguish her light, pushing her down a dark, vengeful path of her own making? The stage is brilliantly, tragically set for an unprecedented era of emotional warfare, and we cannot wait to see how the ashes settle.